Well, good morrow. Richard of Biggleswick here, and I've been having a little meander, a little perambulation, if you don't mind, along the environs of where I live. Puffing my pipe, wearing my hat, and keeping my jacket on because it's cold. And you know what? I've come to the conclusion that what we've got out there is probably not the best thing that we could have. Let me demonstrate. I've been making a list here, and I thought if I was to design what we've got out there, this is what it would sound like. So imagine that you're a bunch of planners for a new town, and you think, Richard has come in with this idea for a new town and is putting it down as a proposal. See what you think about this. So first of all, part of the new town would have a council, of course, that's been voted in and paid very handsomely to run a protection racket. So in other words, the council would collect tax, of course, and it would come round and say, here's a bill, we've not negotiated it with you, the government has told us we've just got to collect it, and basically, if you don't pay us, we'll take away your possessions. There's no sort of alternative, there's no way that you can help any way out or whatever. We'll just basically say, if you refuse to pay, we're taking your car or your house. And it's a set amount, and you don't get any choice whatsoever in whether you want your bins collected, the lights on, whatever it might be. We're just going to charge you come what may. So that would be the first thing. Of course, in this town that I'm designing, I would make sure that there was plenty of surveillance, that cameras are peering down at you, making a note of where you go, and of course we'd be sold on the idea, well, it's for your protection, you see. Not that we've needed cameras in the past, in the many hundreds of years that these towns have been in existence, but now that we've got the technology and that we can surveil you and work out where you are and where you're going, and of course in the future we'll have a digital ID so we know exactly who you are with your biometrics. So we'll set all that up so that's all possible so that we can make sure we know where you are. And particularly in some of the larger shops, you know, the supermarkets, we'll ensure there's cameras all over the place, and that some of the shops that you'll need to have some sort of digital ID to get in. But that's not here quite yet, but we'll make sure you're used to having cameras put in your face and taking facial recognition. So that will be it. Also, in those very large shops, we'll also ensure that they sell primarily highly processed foods that do not have any vitamins, minerals, or any goodness in them. Even the fruit and veg will be covered in some rather nasty stuff that actually isn't healthy to eat, but it keeps the fruit and veg lovely and fresh looking, but not actually good for you. So there will be all of that, and you'll be kind of addicted to that. And a lot of the fast foods will be cooked in oils that are not particularly healthy, doesn't really contain very much in it. But again, it'll have sort of certain chemicals in it so that you feel addicted and you'll keep buying that rather than having nice, good quality, healthy food. In fact, we'll ensure that you very rarely see anywhere that's got actual proper healthy food. So that will be another thing that we'll do. And one of the other things we'll make sure is there's plenty of restrictions on parking your cars. So wherever you go, there'll be time limits, and it would just be very inconvenient. And then you'll get, you know, little notices, penalty notices. We'll make sure that there are plenty of people there, not so much to help you where to park, but more to sort of step back in the shadows, wait till you've parked, and then pounce and put a penalty notice. Because part of this design would be to extract as much money out of you as physically possible. And that goes for those independent people who wish to set up new businesses. We'll make sure that the council is charging very high business rates so that you set up a business and you probably can't afford to stay there after 6 months and you close down. And because of that, and your neighbours close down, what we'll do is we'll turn those buildings into flats and charge a premium for all those people renting, and the rent will just keep going up all the time. time. So we'll do a bit of that. Of course, we will listen to the government and just accept carte blanche, really, all the sort of nonsense of net zero, so that we'll have 15-minute cities, we'll put in electric charging points, we'll definitely have all that business where you have to have a smart meter, and we'll make sure that we help you do that, and that we'll take away your wood-burning stoves or any alternative methods of heating and keeping your house nice and warm, or cooking your food. We'll make sure that we have all that global warming nonsense, and in fact we won't. Our policy as the council will make sure that we don't listen to any alternative ideas or question the science. Goodness gracious, we don't want to question the science, heaven forbid. We'll also ensure that all around the town that there are erected lots of speed traps, so that if you happen to go over, say, 30 miles an hour by a couple of miles an hour in the middle of the night and there's nobody about, there's no one walking there, it's an unusual time, bang, we'll get you when you're least expected. We'll also put in mobile speed cameras all over the place when you don't know, just as you're used to a certain bit and you're driving what you think is a sensible, we'll make sure somebody gets you so we can extract more money from you. The schools, of course, will make it very awkward to get to school, for one thing. And then once you're in the school with the kids, we'll make it, of course, mandatory that you can't take your kids out of the class if they're being taught, say, things you don't want them to be taught, like sexualisation of children and masturbation and those sort of things. Or indeed, you want to go on holiday and educate your children what it looks like abroad in a different culture. If you're doing that in term time, all know there'll be a penalty for that as well. And of course, we'll make sure that these school sizes, the class sizes, are quite big, at least 30 kids, if not more, and they'll all be of the same age, and we'll just make sure that the kids have to obey left, right and centre. You know, put your hand up if you have a problem with, say, you need to go to the toilet, and we'll kind of, you know, give the teachers this parental control over your own children. We'll make sure that that happens as well. We'll make sure that there are more ugly buildings going up, so that those lovely timber frame buildings, perhaps the Elizabethan buildings, the Georgian buildings, the Edwardian, the Victorian buildings, we'll just willy-nilly take them out and put in some very ugly buildings with mean windows, small doorways, no parking, very limited access. We'll make them, you know, hugger-mugger on top of each other, so that they're quite nasty, really. And any of the green belt or the farmland around will ensure that we can get some more new builds on there. Cram in as many houses, not that you can park anywhere nearby, and there'll be very small flimsy houses, and we'll get as many of those in as we can, so that we can make as much money out of the people, of course, as we can. And if you're thinking that we'll have a lovely police force, making sure friendly constables like Dixon of Dock Green coming around, making sure everything's all right. No, we'll do the reverse. We'll dress them up in black. We'll make them look as military as possible. We'll give you the fear of goodness that they're coming for you. But of course, if you are actually burgled or there's a contretemps anywhere, the police won't be anywhere in sight. In fact, we'll even instigate drones to come to the site of any kind of problem first, before we actually put a police officer, or should I say a penalty collecting officer, out there for you. So that would be me putting forward a lovely design for a typical town in this country to say somebody who wanted to set up a whole new town in I don't know, a nice green area. Say, this is, what do you think? Would that be good? I don't think this is actually what people would actually want, of course. This is what we see out there, and as I was walking around with my hat and my pipe puffing about and thinking, this is what we've got. Is that the best we have? Or could we do something a lot better? And that's where my concept of the Biggleswick town. You may have seen a couple of my videos. It was allegory. It was a fictitious town in which it said to the council, we don't want these restrictions that you're putting on us. We don't want all this nasty policies, these anti-human policies that you're putting on us. We are living men and women. We're not living in this corporate Britain any longer. We want stuff that serves us, not the dead entities that come on a bit of paper in capitalisation, thanks very much, in which you, the council, are a business, a corporation that's registered on Dun and Bradstreet, just there to collect the money. We don't want that. And in fact, Biggleswick, the policy of Biggleswick was very much the reverse of all those things. So in other words, the council, if you couldn't pay your council tax, the council tax certainly wouldn't be going off to a government consolidant fund, which is funding war and bombing people, killing people. It would stay in the local environment, and it would be there for independent businesses and real people, men and women, if you couldn't actually contribute to it. And it would be a much fairer system. Then they would say, well, maybe you would like to give us your time if you can't afford it. Perhaps you could help us plant some flowers in the parks or on the verges, make places look nice. Perhaps you would like to do some gardening or a bit of painting on some of the municipal buildings. Perhaps you could get involved in the council and help us make decisions, so that people could actually find different ways of paying or contributing. It wouldn't necessarily always have to come down to a penal system of collecting money. We would obviously get rid of the 5G towers and the surveillance stuff, and supermarkets would be encouraged to buy local produce from local suppliers and more organic than anything else. And these big brands that have nothing in them, they would be definitely out of the window. Parking restrictions would be lifted, and people would be there to help you park rather than penalise you for parking. Business rates would be just scrapped altogether, so that people can invest in their family businesses, and we have more of those, so that the town is full of enterprise rather than the same old chain stores from all over the blooming place. The 15-minute cities nonsense would be scrapped. Of course, we wouldn't be following the government guidelines or intentions of global warming and trying to reduce CO2, the gas of life. Of course not. We want to live, and we want to have a much more healthy environment. So you might be able to go to your hospital and have operations and things, of course, but there might be a health centre which doesn't just have a GP dishing out pharmaceutical pills, but is much more holistic, with all sorts of alternatives like acupuncture, hypnosis, and a whole host of things, Reiki, all sorts of different ways of healing yourself. Of course, the water would be cleaned up, for example. It wouldn't just be treated with chemicals. It would be clean, and we would extract it from the ground in a much more holistic and better way. The school sizes would be reduced, and in fact people would be encouraged to home educate, and more hubs, smaller hubs, where children can be in the environment and understand life and what it's about, rather than following a government curriculum which includes the sexualisation of children. We would get rid of all of that, and we would get rid of a whole load of other bits and bobs that we don't want, like the speed cameras and the traps and things like that. Of course, building on farmland would not be permitted, because farmland would now be encouraged, more allotment space. Farmers would be encouraged not to have monoculture and grow one massive great big crop, but actually to grow for the local environment. And people would be encouraged to purchase and be encouraged, of course, they don't have to, but to eat more healthily, at least have those options everywhere, and see how that would keep them happy and vibrant in many ways. And of course, as I say, your police would be constables who are there to keep the peace and are there to be your friendly, like in the Dixon of Dock Green days, back in the old days, where they were there, part of the community. You knew your police, you weren't fearful of them, and they didn't dress in this military style. Obviously, if there's a crime committed and there's a victim, they are there and would be listening, but they're not there as penal officers to try and extract money from you. And that would be the Biggleswick way. Now, I'm setting up a website to sort of give this this sort of ideal town concept, a bit of a life, so that we could share that across with many other people and say, what about that? What about this as an alternative to the corporate Britain that we live in at the moment? And I do need a bit of help. I don't know if there's any artists out there who could help me draw an artist's impression. I sort of see it from a bird's eye perspective, that sort of aerial view of an idealistic town with beautiful buildings, with aesthetics in them. A town market square, for example, with a bandstand, with your health centre and you know, your buses and various things and cars and all of that. And that you would click on the website and you would find out the alternative way of doing things, the more holistic, the more humble, the more progressive way of doing things than this corporate way of doing things, a much more wholesome town. Now, if anybody can draw pictures pretty well, sort of not cartoony, but not 3D, as in AI type stuff, a real, I don't know how to describe it really, but a much more beautiful artistic image of what a town could be. I'll be very pleased if you were able to help me make the website. I need to get some sort of pretend testimonials of the people who live there, explain how it all works. So do get in touch if you can. But that's the concept, and hopefully the website will be up and running in a few months' time, and we can get people to sort of understand that there is a different way of living. We don't have to live under this penal system of corporate Britain, these dead entities that write to you in your name in capitalisation that goes back to your birth certificate, that you think is you and is there about collecting money and keeping our vibrations down. We need to keep our vibrations up so that we are happy, so that when we're out and about in the society and going to listen to the local musicians at the bandstand, or we're perusing around in the marketplace, looking at the pigs and the sheep and the cows that have come in there to show us where real food comes from, and we're talking to farmers who are growing organic food, or only down the road that we can see how they grow it. We have, as we've got our hats on and we're smoking our pipes and we're proudly excited and exuberant in our town, we have purpose and abundance and prosperity going on in our environment, rather than feeling that the government is continually at us. We would just change this Britain that we live in and have a much more happier one. And that's the image that I feel that we ought to have. You may disagree, and you're very welcome to disagree. But I want to live in an abundant and happy, high vibrational town. And this is just one way of possibly showing that it is possible. It's down to us, the people, to make this work. Good day to you.